Did you know that over 14 million people in the UK are now struggling to afford basic living costs? And that number is still rising. Or that some parts of England have seen floods 6 times in a single year, destroying homes again and again. What's happening in the UK right now isn't just a rough patch, it's a serious decline that's affecting millions. Families are skipping meals. Elderly people are sitting in freezing homes because they can't afford to turn the heating on. Students are dropping out of school due to unbearable stress. Meanwhile, entire neighbourhoods are being swallowed by crime, poverty, and neglect. This isn't the UK people once believed in. So what went wrong? Is it the cost of living crisis? The housing nightmare? The crumbling NHS? Or is it something deeper, something that's quietly transforming life in Britain into something unrecognisable? In this video, we'll break down 10 shocking reasons why the UK is becoming unlivable in 2025. These aren't just news headlines. These are real problems affecting real people, maybe even you. From rising violence to a mental health epidemic, from broken public services to climate disasters, you'll see how all these issues are connected and why things might get worse before they get better. Stay with us, because understanding what's really happening could change how you see everything around you. Number 1. Soaring cost of living. The cost of living in the UK has reached a tipping point in 2025, leaving many families and individuals struggling to make ends meet. Inflation is no longer just a number on a government report. It's a daily reality at the checkout counter, the petrol station, and on monthly bills. While prices are rising, wages have remained stagnant, eroding the purchasing power of millions. Basic necessities like groceries, energy, and transportation have seen dramatic price hikes. A single loaf of bread that once cost £1.10 now averages over £1.60, and energy bills are swallowing a significant chunk of household incomes, especially during the colder months. Despite temporary government aid packages, many households are still being pushed toward fuel poverty, unable to afford proper heating. Meanwhile, the rental market is spiralling. Rent prices in urban centres like London, Manchester, and Bristol have surged beyond what the average worker can afford. Reports show that more than 40% of income is now spent on rent alone in many areas. This forces people into making harsh choices between paying for housing or other essentials like food and medicine. Young people trying to get on the property ladder are now calling it a lost dream. Mortgage rates have climbed, and house prices remain artificially high due to foreign investment and limited housing stock. This creates a two-tier society, dividing homeowners from lifetime renters. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a mental health crisis in disguise. The constant anxiety over rising expenses is leading to higher levels of stress, depression, and family breakdowns. People are skipping meals, avoiding travel, and putting off medical care just to stay afloat. With essentials becoming luxuries, the UK's middle class is shrinking, and poverty is no longer confined to the unemployed. Even full-time workers are visiting food banks. For many, the United Kingdom is no longer just expensive, it's becoming unlivable. Number 2. Housing crisis. The UK housing crisis in 2025 has reached a level many describe as catastrophic. The dream of stable, affordable housing has slipped further away for millions. A chronic undersupply of homes, combined with skyrocketing demand, has pushed both rent and property prices to historic highs. Across the country, first-time buyers are being priced out, and generation rent has become a permanent reality. In major cities like London, Birmingham, and Edinburgh, monthly rents for modest flats now rival monthly mortgage payments, but without the benefit of ownership. A one-bedroom apartment in many urban areas can now exceed £1,500 per month, leaving tenants with little left for other essentials. This imbalance has created a renter's trap, where saving for a deposit becomes impossible due to ever-rising living costs. The social housing sector is overwhelmed. Years of underfunding, poor maintenance, and a lack of new development have led to long waiting lists and substandard living conditions. Some residents report living in damp, mold-infested flats, often with broken heating or plumbing, creating serious health risks. Homelessness is also on the rise, with rough sleepers becoming a common sight in town centres and train stations. Adding to the pressure, buy-to-let investors and foreign buyers continue to purchase properties in bulk, often leaving them vacant as investment assets. This inflates prices and reduces availability, especially in areas already stretched for housing. It's not uncommon to see new luxury developments rise, while local families are forced into temporary accommodations or overcrowded homes. Even the planning system is broken. Projects for affordable housing face long delays, opposition, and bureaucratic hurdles, while high-end developments sail through approval. Entire communities are being displaced by gentrification, and younger generations are being pushed further from city centres, increasing their reliance on costly commutes. This crisis isn't isolated. It affects education, employment, and mental well-being. Without safe, stable homes, people cannot thrive. What once was considered a basic human right is now becoming a privilege, reserved for the few who can still afford it. Number 3. NHS in crisis. In 2025, the National Health Service, NHS, once considered a cornerstone of British society, is facing one of its worst crises in modern history. What was once a symbol of universal care has become a system overwhelmed by understaffing, underfunding, and overload. Patients across the UK are now experiencing record-breaking waiting times, not just for surgeries or specialists, but even for basic GP appointments. Hospitals are operating beyond capacity, with emergency rooms packed and ambulance services stretched to their limits. In some regions, patients are waiting over 12 hours just to be admitted into hospital care. Nurses and doctors are walking away from their roles in record numbers due to burnout, low pay, and impossible workloads. Staff morale is dangerously low, and with fewer professionals on the front lines, those who remain are being pushed to breaking point. The crisis is not only affecting urgent care. Routine procedures like hip replacements, cataract surgeries, and mental health appointments are delayed for months, sometimes even over a year. Such delays can turn manageable conditions into life-threatening complications. Patients are often left in pain, unable to work or function normally while waiting for treatment that once was guaranteed. Access to mental health services has also deteriorated. Rising anxiety, depression, and stress-related illnesses are met with under-resourced support, especially for younger populations. Therapy sessions, once covered, now have waiting lists stretching into the following year. Many are forced to go private, a luxury they simply cannot afford. Even more concerning is the rise in preventable deaths. Reports show that thousands of lives are lost each year due to treatment delays, diagnostic errors, and staffing shortages. It's not a matter of neglect, but of a system buckling under pressure. Faith in the NHS is eroding. What used to be a point of national pride is now seen by many as a broken safety net, unable to protect those who depend on it most. Healthcare is still public, but accessibility and quality are vanishing fast. Number 4. Public transport collapse. The public transport system in the UK is on the verge of collapse in 2025. What was once seen as a practical, eco-friendly alternative to driving has become an unreliable, overpriced, and frustrating experience for millions. From train cancellations to bus delays, the system is failing commuters, students, and workers alike. Rail services, especially in the north of England, have been plagued by constant delays, signal failures, and strike action. Commuters now factor in extra hours for what should be short journeys, knowing that disruption is almost guaranteed. Entire communities rely on these trains to get to jobs, schools, and hospitals, but the infrastructure is decades behind where it needs to be. Crumbling tracks, outdated stations, and insufficient electrification have made daily commuting a gamble. Bus networks aren't faring any better. In many rural and suburban areas, regular routes have been cut or completely discontinued due to funding shortfalls. People without access to a car are left isolated, unable to reach essential services or employment opportunities. In cities, buses are often overcrowded, delayed, and stuck in traffic due to the lack of dedicated bus lanes and urban planning. One of the biggest issues is privatisation. Multiple train and bus operators compete rather than cooperate, leading to confusing ticketing, inconsistent service standards, and little accountability. Fares have soared, while service quality has dropped. A standard rail journey now costs more than flying across Europe, making it unaffordable for many to travel within their own country. The ongoing industrial disputes have added fuel to the fire. Transport workers, demanding fair pay and better conditions, are striking more frequently, and public support is wearing thin as services grind to a halt. The lack of long-term government investment has turned transport into a national embarrassment. Mobility is essential for a functioning society. Without reliable public transport, people lose access to work, education, and even healthcare. The system is not just inconvenient, it's becoming a barrier to daily life in the UK. Number 5. Climate extremes and flooding. The UK in 2025 is facing climate extremes that were once considered rare. Now, they're becoming the new normal. The country is being battered by a dangerous mix of record-breaking heat waves, sudden flash floods, and intense storms, all of which are growing more frequent and more destructive. Communities that once considered themselves safe from extreme weather are now experiencing the front lines of climate change. Last summer, the UK experienced its hottest day ever recorded, with temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius, leading to hundreds of heat-related deaths, particularly among the elderly and vulnerable. Many homes in the UK are not built to handle such extremes. Without air conditioning, people are left to suffer in dangerously hot conditions, and heat stroke cases have surged. Urban areas, in particular, have turned into heat islands, trapping heat due to poor ventilation and lack of green space. Then came the floods. Relentless rainfall, often in short, violent bursts, has overwhelmed outdated drainage systems, leading to flash flooding in both rural and urban areas. Entire neighbourhoods have been submerged within hours, destroying homes, disrupting transport, and causing millions in damage. Towns along rivers like the Severn, Thames, and Ouse are being flooded multiple times a year, forcing people to rebuild again and again. What makes this worse is the lack of preparation. Despite decades of warnings, green infrastructure investments remain minimal. The UK's flood defence systems are outdated, and many at-risk communities have been left without adequate support or relocation plans. Building on floodplains continues, worsening the impact. These weather events are no longer freak accidents. They are systemic failures, magnified by a changing climate. Insurance companies are pulling out of high-risk zones, making it harder for families to recover. Schools, roads, and hospitals are also being affected, disrupting everyday life. Climate change isn't just about the environment anymore. It's directly affecting health, housing, mobility, and safety. The UK is becoming a place where people fear both the next storm and the next heat wave, because either one could be devastating. Number 6. Rising crime rates and policing cuts. In 2025, the UK is witnessing a sharp rise in crime, creating a growing sense of insecurity in both urban and rural communities. From shoplifting and burglary to knife crime and gang violence, incidents are escalating, while the visible presence of police on the streets continues to decline. Years of budget cuts, low morale, and poor recruitment have hollowed out the nation's policing system, leaving communities vulnerable and criminals emboldened. Violent crime is no longer confined to city centres. Knife-related offences have spread into suburbs and small towns, with young people increasingly caught in the crossfire of gang rivalries and county lines drug operations. The number of serious youth offences has climbed steadily, and schools are struggling to keep students safe. Parents are now warning their children not just about strangers, but about classmates. Burglary and vehicle thefts are also on the rise, but victims often receive little to no response from local authorities. In some areas, overstretched police forces simply don't have the manpower to investigate property crimes. The result? A growing number of people feel forced to install private security systems or even take matters into their own hands. This collapse in public trust is partly driven by the numbers. The UK has lost over 20,000 frontline officers since 2010. Despite promises to rebuild the force, many new recruits leave within their first year due to low pay, mental stress, and lack of support. Without adequate personnel, police are unable to patrol neighbourhoods, de-escalate violence, or even respond promptly to emergency calls. Adding to the crisis, community policing, which used to build relationships and prevent crime before it starts, has been nearly dismantled. Youth centres and support programs that once offered alternatives to gang life have been shut down due to austerity measures. This vacuum is now being filled by crime networks who recruit vulnerable teens with promises of money and protection. A country without law enforcement presence invites chaos. As people grow fearful in their own streets, the UK feels less like a modern nation and more like a place where safety is no longer guaranteed. Number 7. Broken immigration system. The UK's immigration system in 2025 is widely seen as broken, leading to widespread labour shortages, growing social tensions, and a humanitarian crisis that continues to deepen. Decades of political battles over immigration policy have created a system that is both inefficient and inhumane, failing to serve the economy, society, or the people caught in its web. One of the most immediate effects is a severe shortage of workers in key sectors. Hospitals, farms, restaurants, care homes, and construction sites are all struggling to fill essential roles. Post-Brexit restrictions and an overly bureaucratic visa system have driven away foreign workers who once kept these industries running. Fields go unharvested, care homes are understaffed, and NHS hospitals are overburdened due to a lack of skilled professionals. Meanwhile, the asylum system is collapsing under pressure. Thousands of refugees and asylum seekers are trapped in limbo, forced to live in temporary accommodations like barges, hotels, or overcrowded shelters, some waiting years for a decision. These conditions have led to worsening mental health, and children are growing up without access to proper education, healthcare, or a stable home. The government's approach has grown increasingly hostile, with policies focused more on deterrence than integration. Plans to deport refugees to third countries have sparked legal challenges and international criticism. At the same time, those already living in the UK face hostile environment checks, risking deportation for minor administrative errors. This climate has fueled rising xenophobia. Immigrants, both legal and undocumented, report increased discrimination, harassment, and abuse. The toxic rhetoric around immigration has divided communities and stoked fear rather than understanding. Ironically, many communities suffering from economic decline are the same ones desperate for new workers, entrepreneurs, and families to fill schools and keep businesses open. Yet government policy continues to treat immigration as a threat, not a solution. Without a functional, fair, and forward-looking immigration system, the UK is not just turning away talent and hope, it's actively contributing to its own decline, one policy failure at a time. Number 8. Energy insecurity. In 2025, the UK is grappling with a growing crisis of energy insecurity. What was once a background concern has now become a central threat to economic stability, public health, and daily life. Households across the country are experiencing sky-high energy bills, frequent supply concerns, and increasing reliance on fossil fuels, despite promises of a cleaner, more stable future. One of the driving issues is the UK's heavy dependence on imported energy, especially natural gas. Global disruptions, geopolitical tensions, and supply chain instability have caused wholesale prices to soar. These costs are passed directly to consumers, resulting in energy bills that have more than doubled for many households over the past 2 years. Even with government interventions, families are being forced to choose between heating their homes or putting food on the table. Fuel poverty is rising sharply, particularly among the elderly, disabled, and low-income groups. Many are limiting their heating during cold months, leading to increases in respiratory illnesses, hospital admissions, and even winter deaths. The situation is no longer seasonal. Some families now live with minimal or no heating all year round. At the same time, the transition to renewable energy has been slow and inconsistent. Despite the UK's wind and tidal potential, investment delays, planning restrictions, and political instability have stalled the growth of green infrastructure. Solar and wind farms remain underdeveloped, and the national grid struggles to adapt to variable inputs. Privatised energy companies have come under fire for prioritising profits over people. While households struggle to keep their lights on, major providers continue to report record-breaking profits. Calls for renationalisation or tighter regulation are growing louder as trust in the current model collapses. The lack of a coherent energy strategy has left the UK exposed, vulnerable to global price swings, and unable to guarantee stable supply during periods of peak demand. Energy insecurity is no longer just a technical issue. It's a threat to well-being, equity, and the country's ability to function in a modern world. Number 9. Mental health crisis. The UK is experiencing a full-blown mental health crisis in 2025, affecting people across all ages, backgrounds, and income levels. The pressure of economic hardship, social isolation, overwork, and a collapsing support system has pushed mental well-being to the edge. Conditions like depression, anxiety, burnout, and stress-related disorders are surging, and the resources to cope are stretched far beyond capacity. Recent studies show a dramatic increase in mental health issues among young adults and teenagers, particularly since the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. Social media addiction, academic pressure, and fear about the future have made adolescence more overwhelming than ever. Suicide rates among under 25s have risen, and many are unable to access timely help. For adults, the constant strain of rising bills, job insecurity, and lack of affordable housing is manifesting in chronic stress and emotional exhaustion. Mental health days are becoming more common, yet employers often lack the infrastructure or compassion to support struggling staff. The stigma may be fading, but the services are not keeping up. The NHS mental health system is collapsing under demand. Waiting lists for therapy and psychiatric care stretch for months, sometimes years. Patients are told to wait or go private, but the average person cannot afford a £60 per hour counselling session. Those in crisis are often sent to emergency rooms, which are ill-equipped to handle psychological emergencies. The lack of community support, especially in low-income areas, has made it even harder for people to find relief. Youth centres, support groups, and outreach programs have been shut down or underfunded. Many are left to navigate mental illness alone, compounding their suffering. This crisis is affecting productivity, relationships, and even physical health, creating a ripple effect throughout society. A mentally unwell population cannot thrive, innovate, or contribute effectively. The UK isn't just facing a healthcare failure, it's confronting a national trauma unfolding in slow motion, hidden behind closed doors and silent suffering. Number 10. Decline in local services. Across the UK in 2025, the decline of local services is being felt in every corner of the country. Libraries, youth centres, public parks, and community hubs, once pillars of neighbourhood life, are closing at an alarming rate. Years of austerity, measures, funding cuts, and shifting priorities have drained local councils of the resources they need to maintain even the most basic public services. The closure of libraries is more than the loss of books. These spaces offered free internet, quiet study areas, and community events for people of all ages. In deprived areas, they were safe havens for children, job seekers, and the elderly. Without them, many are left with nowhere to go, especially those who can't afford private alternatives. Youth services have been decimated. Once vibrant youth clubs, mentoring programs, and activity centres have vanished. As these safe spaces disappear, teenagers are more vulnerable to gang recruitment, antisocial behaviour, and mental health issues. With nothing constructive to do and nowhere to go, many feel abandoned by the very society meant to support them. Public toilets, leisure centres, and sports facilities have also been sacrificed. The loss of these everyday services creates a ripple effect, impacting public health, social engagement, and community pride. Elderly residents in particular suffer when basic amenities are no longer accessible within walking distance. The decline isn't just physical, it's emotional. Communities lose their sense of connection, identity, and belonging. People become more isolated, and streets feel emptier, less safe, and less cared for. Local festivals, events, and gatherings that once brought neighbours together are disappearing due to budget constraints and lack of coordination. Councils are left to make impossible choices with shrinking budgets. They must decide whether to fund child protection, social care, or keep the local swimming pool open. There is simply not enough money to go around, and the cracks are becoming too large to hide. The erosion of local services means fewer opportunities to connect, grow, and thrive. Without vibrant community infrastructure, the UK's social fabric continues to unravel, leaving people more divided, disconnected, and disillusioned than ever. What's happening across the UK isn't just a series of isolated problems, it's a growing pattern of systemic breakdown. From the rising cost of living to the collapse of essential services, these aren't temporary inconveniences, they're warning signs of a society under extreme pressure, where everyday life is becoming harder, colder, and more uncertain. People are being forced to make impossible choices between heating and eating, between paying rent or buying medication. Communities are being hollowed out. Young people are losing faith in the future. The cracks in the system are no longer hidden. They're everywhere, and they're growing wider by the day. What's most troubling is how normalised this has all become. Long NHS waits, unaffordable homes, unsafe streets, mental health struggles, flooded towns. These are now part of the national routine. For many, this isn't just a policy failure. It feels like abandonment. This isn't about doom or panic. It's about reality. And unless these issues are addressed with urgency and compassion, more people will fall through the gaps. Because a country doesn't become unlivable all at once. It happens slowly, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and realise this isn't the same place anymore. If this video opened your eyes, let us know in the comments. What shocked you the most about today's UK? We pour our heart into every video. So if you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means everything to us.